Hello again. As promised, I am releasing what I consider the best, the safest and the cheapest organic homemade electro-conductive paint recipe to date on the Ethernet. I won't gatekeep this secret recipe from you guys, nor will I be asking for any fees. When I first began to electroform, the biggest block I faced was finding a reliable and easy-to-make recipe for electro-conductive paint. As mentioned before, I tried dozens and dozens of homemade recipes that are out there online, free and paid-for recipes from some of the biggest and oldest electroformers in the world and on social media. Well, after many years of searching, I have found a formula no one else has created nor released or mentioned before me to my personal knowledge. But if I'm wrong, let me know, so I can give credit. Without further ado, here are the 3 ingredients you will need to make this DIY conductive paint. First ingredient is graphite powder. For the best results and highest quality in details, I recommend using 3000 mesh pure graphite powder. Second ingredient you will need is ethanol alcohol. The higher the purity, the better, since it will contain less water and dry faster when brushing and instantly when airbrush. More information about airbrush application soon. The third and final ingredient you will need is simple pure shellac flake. That is right. Shellac is the third organic ingredient in the formula. Second organic ingredient is ethanol. If you cannot find 3000 mesh pure graphite powder, you can use whatever you can find or simply try to make your own. As you can tell, I am quite proud and happy to share this conductive paint formula. It took me years to realize I could make it this way. Here is everything I recommend you to use to prepare your own DIY homemade conductive paint. Stainless steel mixing bits to help with the consistency while mixing. A small 1 fluid ounce vial container to keep the conductive paint airtight sealed. I will also use a small wooden spoon to handle ingredients and some small piece foil to keep my weight scale clean. A grams weight scale, so you can accurately measure the ingredients. But if you don't have one, don't worry, you can still prepare it by simply guessing the amounts. The formula is completely flexible and very forgiving. Finally, personal protection equipment. You should use mask, gloves, and glasses. All of the ingredients are safe to handle. However, graphite powder at 3000 mesh is very fine and can hurt your lungs. Let's make this DIY homemade conductive paint together. I will start by adding 4 stainless steel mixing bits into my 1 fluid ounce vial. After quickly making sure my grams weight scale is still accurate, I begin by weighing 2 grams of pure shellac flake and adding that to the vial. Next, I will slowly open the graphite to not make much dust even though I am wearing mask. Best to avoid having that powder everywhere in my lab. I will weight 7 grams of pure 3000 mesh graphite powder. Once I have 7 grams of graphite, I will add that to the vial. Lastly, I will add the ethanol alcohol to the vial. Once you add alcohol for the first time, give it a few seconds for the alcohol to soak into the graphite and refill to top the vial again, leaving a small empty space for mixing room. Close vial and mix every 15 minutes for 1 hour, and the paint is ready to use once the shellac dissolved. Shellac and ethanol alcohol can be combined to make an organic sealant for other organic items, such as leaves, seeds, branches, stones, insects, bones, and almost anything else you can think of. So if you want to make a sealant for your objects, you can simply add 70% of alcohol and as much shellac as you want to add. I recommend adding shellac till it thickens to an oil-like consistency. The more you add, the thicker the base sealant will become, to the point where it can be as thick as honey or a paste if you wish to make it that way. As previously mentioned, by making this conductive paint formula, you may not need to use sealants for many objects since the shellac will seal the object as it dries when using as electroforming conductive paint if graphite is added to the mix. So with this conductive paint formula, you can also save a lot of time by not having to seal many objects before electroforming. It took me years to realize this was possible. Once you make this DIY homemade conductive paint formula for yourself, you will realize that this paint doesn't just behave like a paint, but it also acts a lot like an ink. It is super fluid, able to get into all crevasses and deep and hard to reach areas. The dry time is super fast, and not almost instantaneous, but actually instantaneously drying if used with an airbrush sprayer. Watch the next section to see that instantaneous drying time when using airbrush. Even if using brush, it will dry quickly if you apply a thin layer of conductive paint. You can see that happening in the back of that fail 3D resin print. In this last section of the video, I will demonstrate this new DIY homemade conductive paint in action when airbrushing. I will upload the long version videos at some point, so if you are interested in watching, make sure to come back and check for those videos. Using an airbrush sprayer, the electroconductive paint dries almost at the same time the paint comes into contact with the item being sprayed on. Since the ethanol alcohol used in my formula is 99.9% ethanol, the air from the airbrush dries the paint as it is being applied. It almost feels like spraying dry powder. I have ran several tests, and even one coat of this conductive paint can result in almost perfect electro-formed items. I'll upload a few demonstration videos shortly of 3D resin prints electro-formed with this conductive paint formula. Thanks for watching and subscribing. I hope my findings and videos help you and keep you entertained.